You may be seated. And so I am thankful to get a chance to be here with you guys tonight and to have this opportunity. Thank you, Nate, for being a friend we're going on 20 years now. And you wanted me to talk about friendship and love. And while I am thankful that we get a chance to do that, I look up and sometimes just go, what does it take? And I saw something as the announcements were scrolling on the screen. And the very top announcement, it said, "See a need, meet a need." And that's one thing that I think is very important, because seeing a need would indicate that I've noticed someone, I've noticed something, I've noticed somebody. And so I think that's a really, really neat way. And what we want to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about love, and we're going to talk about a few things that go along with that. And when I think about love, I don't want you to be like, man, this dude's about to get up there and ramble for, 45 minutes about Valentine's Day. I'm not. I'm probably going to ramble about an hour and 15 minutes, and it won't be about anything consistent. No, but when we talk about love, it's not Valentine's Day. It's not the little heart candies that we might have gotten in school. It's not the Mickey Mouse sucker that had the heart shaped. It's none of that. I think about a couple of things. The passage where we will land tonight will be 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the love chapter, that a lot of times you have probably heard at a wedding. And so that, while it is great to use as a wedding passage, is not the intent of the passage. The author of this letter is Paul, as you may know. And as Paul is writing to the church at Corinth, and he gets to chapter 13, as he starts to talk through what's going on, you got to understand the church in Corinth, they had a mess on their hands. They had a mess where they had let sin in. They kind of at times turned a blind eye, which is why 2 Corinthians was written like hold up, I think you missed the whole first letter. And so when we learn about that, but I think about love. I was once told, hey, you will never understand love until you have children. I would say that at this point, with my 3 boys, I probably would agree with that. And then people that have grandchildren, I was told by the very first pastor I served under, Brother Jerry Doggett, he said, hey, his grandkids come running in the church one day, and they got a pass. Everybody else got in trouble for running in the church. Brother Jerry's grandkids, they were getting it through there playing. And he said, you see what that is? So, yeah, it's Annalise and Andrew. He's like, that's God's reward for not choking you teenagers. And one day you're going to have teenagers, and just know that you don't understand love until you have grandkids. And so I'm in the battle of teenagers right now, so that's why I'm here, so that I'm not at home choking them. But it's coming. No. So when I think about love, I think about initially in the very beginning, in all of beginning. And so we're going to track a little bit until we get to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, God had made man. And he made man in his image, and in his image, things were good. And then he saw all of the beasts of the field that he had created, and everything that was created. He said, those things just aren't fit for this creation that I've made. So it is not fit that man be alone. So he created woman, so that he would have a companion, he would have a helper, he would have a wife, and that they would share life together, they would weep together, they would cry together, they would celebrate together, and that they would maybe one day grow old together. This is the way God designed it. And that they should become one flesh, they should leave their father and their mother. You know this story. And so when I think about God loving us, and even in that right there, sin entered in Genesis 3. And when sin entered in Genesis 3, there was a mess. And it's been a mess ever since. There was death that entered, there was heartache, there was brokenness. And then the story of Abraham. and how Abraham's descendants would last and last and last and last and last. Now let's fast forward hundreds of years, and we see that the church is born. Where is it born? Because Peter stood up on the day of Pentecost, and he began to preach. And as he began to preach, what did he preach? Well, he preached, let's back up a little bit further, he preached Christ's death, burial, resurrection, what we know as the gospel. And that's where we get a real true picture of love. And so, what we want to do is we want to impact our communities. I think about, if you will, reminisce with me. My grandmother, her name is officially Momo. Fredna Earl was her name. I'm from Richton. Okay, that's where I was born and raised. It is God's country. You should visit. I visited last weekend. Wish I hadn't done that, but it's not like I remembered it being. But while I was there, I thought about things about like my grandmother. She didn't have much, but she always had just enough. Her front door was always open, but if you knew Momo's house, then the front door was never the front door. The front door was the carport door, and the carport door led into the kitchen. That was the front door. Nobody came through the front door. And there was always we can make coffee. I always had a snack available. And it didn't matter who you are, where you came from. And you go, well, that's kind of a different time. Well, didn't we live that different time somewhere around, and this is going to be hard to believe, 6 years ago, in a time called COVID? Prior to that, it would have been about 15 years prior to that, in a simple time called Hurricane Katrina, when you couldn't do anything and the world wasn't as fast-paced. And so we sat together and we visited. Katrina, we were emptying freezers out because it was going to ruin, so we might as well all get together and cook and eat. And then we spent those times together. And then during COVID, we would do that, and you would look up. And I remember going by houses that we weren't supposed to be at, and there would be kids playing in the yard. Families were open. What are we doing tonight? We're going over there because we slowed down. And during that time, we really, even with all the anxiousness and all the scared, everything that was going on, we really started paying attention to, hey, I haven't seen this person in a while. We should call and check on them. Hey, does such and such have any medication? Because I can run get that for them because they're too vulnerable to be out. And that goes back to that see a need, meet a need. And I fear that we are culturally driven to fly right by the next person because we got to get it. You got to make hay while the sun's shining. And now we have lights on all of the cabs of our tractors, so we never shut down. And this is not me at all. Don't think that Andy's standing here like preaching at you. Like, this is something that I deal with. I mean, I have a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 6-year-old. They're all into the same things, but they're all different. And it's go, go, go. And, hey, does your son have a phone yet? It's like, no, they don't. What? They need a phone. Who are they going to call? Ghostbusters? I mean, they're with us. Like, what do they need this for? And so it had a chance for us to draw some really hard lines, which is why I think it's important that we get into this. And I love the fact that y'all are here tonight, because as we jump into this passage about love, I think about whenever it's the story in Luke when Jesus was the lawyer stood up in Luke chapter 10 in verse 25, and it said, behold, a lawyer stood up and he put him to test, saying, teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, what is written in the law, and how do you read it? And he said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Coming from the Levitical law, love the Lord your God. It's in our interpretation of love has been so distorted because we watch movies that show love that really focus more on lust than it does love. We have TV shows that focus more on lust than it does love. But what is love? And that's what I want to talk about tonight and what we can do about it. So in chapter 13, verse 1, it says, if I speak to you, if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but I have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all the mysteries and knowledge, if I have all the faith as to remove mountains, but I have not love, I have nothing. If I give away all that I have and I deliver up my body to be burned, and I have not love, I gain nothing. If you would put your finger right there, why is that important? You got to understand that the Christians at the time were being persecuted. And whenever you read, if I give away all that I have and I'm delivered my body up to be burned, but I have not love, I gain nothing. People that were followers of Christ under the time of Nero, they were being, it's awful in every way, but this was a reality. They were taking Christians and they were putting them on lampposts and they were burning them in the streets so they would have lights in the streets to party. That sounds terrible. But it is historical and it is real. And so Paul is saying, even if you make all of the sacrifices and you have not love, if you bounce back to the story of the Good Samaritan, who was the first one to come by? There's not a whole bunch of people here. We can talk together. I like to talk together. Who was the first one to come by? The priest, right? And the priest knew all the laws. Okay? So if he stops to help not the Samaritan, but the man that had been beaten, if he stops to help him and he has open wounds and he's naked, that deems him ceremonially unclean. Now we understand that Jesus is telling a parable, but to get the whole picture, I think the idea is that the priest is on his way to the temple to do the work of the Lord. But if he stops and he deals with this man, he then becomes unclean. So if he becomes unclean, then he looks bad when he shows up to the temple. We'll say he could fake it. Well, you know what happened when you faked it? And maybe you drew the straw to get to the temple, and you drew the straw to go into the Holy of Holies to do the things in there that needed to be done for worship. What happened if you walked in there and you were unclean and you went into the Holy of Holies? You had that rope tied around your foot. They'd just drag you right on out and send another one in. So, it's almost like he knew all of the religious steps to take. But he didn't love people. To be fair, it's reading into it a little bit, maybe even getting into the weeds, but to understand the concept, if we're not careful, then we look up and we can get so caught up into the religious practices that we forget about the people that we are attempting to reach. Carrying on. Verse 4, love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way, and it is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but it rejoices with truth. Let's pause. When I hear about love is patient and love is kind, and I go back to Jesus' death on the cross, and then I think about some of the things I've been taught through the years. While I may look like I don't pay attention 98% of the time, I probably don't. But there have been some things that have stuck along the way. Some of those things have been this. I was taught one time that I can forgive but not forget. I was taught that. I don't think that's right according to this, because we are not to hold, it bears all things, believes all, it does not rejoice in wrongdoing. It's not holding, I'm not holding Love does not hold those things against you, but we work through things together, right? I was taught that that if someone was different than me, then I can write them off. I can passive aggressively ignore them. Where love, when it says in verse 7, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, that whole love bears all things, that also means very difficult conversations. My wife is not a person of confrontation. She doesn't like it. She doesn't do it. It's kind of like a shutdown city. Like, she backs up. And I am the neighborhood that I grew up in, which is like this out here. It was not a neighborhood. We'd get on our bikes and ride a quarter mile to go to our friend's house, and we didn't know that there were property lines until we were in high school and we had four-wheelers, and then we realized there are property lines, and people don't like certain things on their property, and those certain things were us. That was a reality. And so, but when we were kids and we were building forts and fires and doing whatever else we were doing, we went all over the place. Now, let me get back to what I was saying. Love bears all things. Oh, so in that little neighborhood that we grew up in, there were 9 boys, 3 different families, 9 boys. We were all very well-mannered, very well-behaved. There was never an ill word spoken. We always played 2-hand touch football, and there was always plenty to eat. We never complained. And if you believe any of that, then I've got some oceanfront property in Arizona I'd like to sell you this afternoon. It was tough. Like we were tough, and so confrontation became kind of what we did. Like, you want to go? Let's go, because you can get skin up, as you don't have to tell anybody about it. And so there are different people. Different people have different personalities. But one of the things I've learned about families, and one of the things I've learned about church, and one of the things I've learned about community is that if I go by and I don't tell somebody the truth, then I'm not really loving them well. I'm not. Well, what if they get mad? What if they don't? What if they receive it? There's a guy that I work with now, and he talks about the 3 T's: tact, timing, and tone, and how we tell things and how we deal with people. If we come in and speak to them in a condescending way, it doesn't matter if it's good advice or what, it's going to be received in a poor way. I'm trying to learn this with my 3 boys. Catherine's like, you're just loud. Well, God made me that way. Can't help it. You got to be careful how you deal with these things, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing with when we're at the ball field, or when we're at Sunday school, or when we're at Vacation Bible School, and that one group that shows up and they are tearing the walls down. To love them is to go, hey, this is not the expectation. This is the expectation. And we'll help you get there if you'll let us. And that's loving them through it. And so when we go to verse 8, it says, love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, you can underline that, you can circle it, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now, we see in the mirror dimly, but then face to face, now I know in part, that I shall know fully, even as I have become fully known, so now faith, hope, and love abide. These 3 But the greatest of these is love. Here is the whole drive home point of tonight for us to grasp, for us to understand, for us to work through together. Love is patient. When I think about what Jesus did on the cross, to know that he had, you talk about somebody with like confrontation, I'm not saying I would have won, but I would have wanted to fight. I would have wanted to fight back. I wouldn't have wanted to be beat down. I wouldn't have wanted to receive that. I would have been like, I'm going to draw a line like that. And that's it. Jesus did draw a line in the sand, and you know what? They pulled his hair out. They beat him. They stabbed him. Like they did all of this stuff, and he continued to receive it, knowing that all he had to do was clear his throat, and a legion, which is hundreds of thousands of angels, would have come out of heaven, and they could have wiped it all out and could have started over. The promise that at one point, if you remember, at Mount Sinai, whenever they had built the golden calf, and they were worshiping the golden calf, and God has a conversation with Moses and says, that this is, I'm putting it again in my slang terms for the sake of not going there. Hey, we'll kill them all and start over. Me and you, Moses, what you think? And Moses is like, God, that's not your nature. What would the Egyptians say? That God wasn't strong enough to deliver them out of slavery? Their God wasn't strong enough to deliver them out of this? Lord, be gracious. Let's lead them. God knew that. God wanted to see what his response was going to be. God was going to be gracious. And so when we think about how God loved his people well enough to go, this is what's best for them, that Jesus, whenever Jesus died on the cross, he could have called the legion of angels, and they could have wiped everybody off the face of the earth, and they could have started over right there. We could have been the new heaven and the new earth, and we could be sitting right here without the joys of children, without the joys of grandchildren, without the joys of getting the chance to be baptized, without the opportunity to learn about how the storms of last week have made beautiful days like today. And how much God loves us to go, he allows us to see those things so that we can worship him. And so when we fall into love is patient and kind, it does not envy or boast, it is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist in its own way. Our culture is telling us to make it all about you. Make it all about you. Back before there was Facebook, there was this thing called MySpace. Oh yeah, and people would take pictures and they would post all of their dumb stuff about brag post this, brag post this. This is kind of this. I'm going to take a jab at my younger brother because y'all don't know him, and it's just good to do. He needs it. I had at one time an antique. I've had a couple of antiques, and then I got married. I don't have them anymore. So if anybody has any wisdom there, I'd love to hear about it. But I don't have my antiques anymore. They were fun and expensive to fix and all of those things. Well, I've got this MySpace account, and I'm going through there. Well, my younger brother has taken pictures of my 2 antique trucks and has put them on his MySpace. Look at my toys. These were not his. Those were mine. And then a little bit further down was my dad's motorcycles. And then my dad's camper is this dude is all but living in my parents' basement. What in the world? And as silly as that was and that is, don't we live at a place where the world is telling us the very same things right now? Serve me. I deal with people that visit the church. And they come in and they sit down. I would love to meet up with you. This really isn't my style. Okay. The method that you do this really isn't what I prefer. Well, I must have mistaken. I didn't realize we were here to worship you. I thought we were here to worship the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, Alpha, Omega, the beginning, the end, the one who was and is to come. So since it's about you, let's just change it all. And so what I want to do is I want us to, I want you to leave here encouraged tonight. Why? Because in the middle of all of the things that we see, God gave us something. He saw that it was not fit for man to be alone, and he gave him a wife. But in that, he also gave men and women the chance to have friendships, relationships. I'm going to say something, and I may get myself in trouble, and I apologize if I do. I think that counseling is a wonderful thing. I really do. I think that going to counseling is a wonderful thing. If you're a counselor, I appreciate you answering the call to be able to do this. I tell people as a pastor, about the second time I meet with them, I go, I love you. I'm willing to work with you through things. I'm not a counselor, so I don't have the ability to compartmentalize the very things that you're telling me, so I'm going to get you the help that you need. I think that there was a time when we spent time with one another and built relationships well enough with one another that we used each other as counselors. And we've lost that. We've lost that. A time whenever someone would sit on the couch beside you or the love seat beside you, and you would pull a tissue off of the end table to hand to them as they wept, and you held their hand. Men, I was raised by a manly man, like a beast of a man. And he was raised, his dad passed away when he was 12. So he became the man of the house. He was the oldest one. So in between playing sports, he worked to help my grandma and pay the bills. And there was a time where men, they didn't talk about emotions. Well, you hurt my feelings. We don't pay you to have feelings. We pay you to work. Like, let's go. Let's get after it. I mean, am I wrong? I mean, we're all in that together. I had to catch myself today at baseball practice. Little kid, and it came out of my mouth before I could do anything. He missed the ball, hit him in the nose. He got blood going down his nose. He falls down and starts crying. He's 12 years old. Other coaches ran over there and they go to pick him out. It's like, get up. Yeah. And he's crying. It's like, just get up. Like, you're okay. Kids get hit in the face with a baseball. I said, hey, buddy, next time, use your glove. And then I walked off, and the other coaches coddled him over there, and his mom would come out there, and I was like, boy, I'm about to get in trouble. I should have stopped that. But not that that's a bad thing, but that's the way we were raised. We also weren't raised in a way that we show love well. We weren't. My wife and I have been married 20 years this year. Lucky her. And in 20 years, I've had to learn to love my wife. She's not one of my brothers. She's not one of the boys at the field house or at work. And she's not just the housekeeper. She's my friend. And God gave that so that we could experience that together. And draw this thing to a close. So how do we do that in our community? Well, I remember a time when people moved into a community, and this happened when we moved into Ellisville. It happened when we moved to Summerland. It did not happen when we moved to where we are now. And you would get a plate of cookies. We just want to welcome you to the neighborhood. It'd be nice. We just wanted to meet you. because we saw a need. My ask for you, my challenge for you is, where do you see the need? Do we wait for somebody to put a prayer request on Facebook that says, please pray for me, before we text half the people in the congregation and in the next Sunday school class and in the next community over to go, hey, what's going on with Lucille? What if we just called Lucille or just showed up? Hey, saw there's a problem. Can I help you? Let me get the kids. Go handle your business. Amen. When's the last time we showed up at a brother's house just to go, hey man, I love you. My oldest son has Down syndrome, and we had gotten this diagnosis, and I have a friend. I would say his name, but I don't want to, because we're good, we're close. And anyway, so I call him. I was like, dude, I said, we're just letting you know, like we got the prenatal diagnosis. We don't even know what this means. We don't know. I mean, what do we have to start doing? Like, we didn't know. We were kids. We were in our early 20s. We have a baby on the way, and you don't know what to do anyway. And now you get this diagnosis, and it's like, what do we do? Now, I remember sitting in my yard. Some people had come over to Catherine and was sitting there with Catherine, and she was sitting in the house crying, and I was sitting in my yard, and for some reason I had a log sitting there, and I was sitting on that log, and I had my dog, Choco, my chocolate lab. And I was just sitting there thinking, like, what does this look like? What does the future look like? Is this going to put a strain on our marriage? What does my job look like? What does life look like? And I heard a door close. And my friend, Greg, comes, steps over the log, and he sits beside me. Never says a word. That was an act of love. Let's not neglect the very thing that God has given us. Why? Because these things remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest is love. Why is the greatest love? Because Jesus promised that he would come and call his bride, the church, and take her home. That's why love remains. So I'm gonna just give a second. You can come on up. And I want you guys just to take an opportunity to reflect. Reflect on maybe needs in your community. Reflect on conversations that maybe need to happen. Reflect on how maybe this week I've missed the chance to love, or that God would provide us the way for us to go, hey, I see that need. I'm going to meet that need, not because of a religious status, but because of who Christ is in me. So if you will, let's take a moment and bow in prayer. And then you'll lead us in worship. And I invite you to pray together. Come to the altar and pray, or just sit where you are and rest and pray.
I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Lord, now indeed I find thy power in thine alone. can change the leper's spots and melt this heart of stone.